I'm Tony Sklar with BNet TV. We're here at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in 2012. I am having the pleasure of speaking with VSS Monitoring's Andy Huckridge. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Listen, for all our first-time viewers out there in BNet TV land, why don't you give us a brief overview of what VSS is and where you fit in the ecosystem?
Sure, okay. So, good question. So VSS is in the business of network intelligence optimization. So what's that?
What's that?
So what we do is we optimize data that comes from a network, and we make tools that are connected to our infrastructure, to our switching fabric, much more efficient. And the way that we do that is that we optimize data that travels up to those tools from the network, preserving link layer visibility.
So a lot of people would say, listen, there are so many facets now to the whole infrastructure process. There's a lot of, this whole show, there's been a number of hot topics. This happens to be one of them. The infrastructure costs have soared for companies, for the carriers, in putting in brand new LTE systems. They've decided that, that's not necessarily 100% the way that we're going to go. We're going to offload into certain areas. So, there's a lot of different gamut here. Where are you finding that you're finding the best penetration?
Sure. Okay. Well, there was a few questions in there, I think. Right. So first of all, we are in a new and interesting segment. So, however you want to describe this segment, whether it's a fabric switch or whether this is a visibility layer, but we're providing something new to the industry, and it's all about CapEx and OpEx for us. So, we can help to save a carrier. I should say that we can help a carrier to save up to 80% of CapEx, up to 50% of OpEx, and we can do this by optimizing data that comes up from the network and goes into the tool layer. So the really key interesting features here, though, is that it all boils down to the way that we can provide a mesh architecture, that we can provide filtering, aggregation, port stamping, time stamping, things like this, that allow tools to be used for the first time in their most efficient way. So whether those tools be inline performance tools, security tools, or whether they be acceleration tools, then we can help the operator to have the most efficiently run network, which provides QoE differentiators, for example, to have them to be able to be the best, most efficiently run operator that there is. Now, in this particular market, where operators are struggling with revenue, where operators are struggling with retaining subscribers, then that's a really powerful thing, and that's what VSS is all about. Okay,
let's talk about ARPU, because again, a really hot topic. Okay, the carrier is suffering the CapEx situation terribly, because the OTT players, the top players, they're there and they don't have to pay for it, right? They don't. And the more I've been using this analogy a lot throughout the conference, talking with companies like yourself. The more food that we put on the table, the more that we want to eat. So the consumer doesn't really care, right? They've got these great devices. There is a lot of food out there for them to consume, and they're eating it, and they love it. What they don't like is when there is a problem within the infrastructure. So we're seeing, a lot of the legacy architecture that does need to be consistently upgraded. There's a lot of SONs that have already been put into place. So, how does the carrier come to a company like VSS and say, hey, okay, we need some monitoring solutions, we need to optimize that data, but at the same time, we don't want to
have to spend a whole bunch of new money on new infrastructure. We don't want to have to deal with understanding what the problem with our traffics and networks are. We don't want to, blah, 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 blah.
And at the same time, we got to introduce new policy management.
Sure. So policy management, let's come back to that a little bit later on. But the first two things is that, for example, if you have an operator that is worried about the gamut of tool vendors, and there's more and more tool vendors out there every day. Sure. If you're worried about those tool vendors, if they're worried about those tool vendors attaching to their network and the possibilities, downtime that can cause, we solve that problem. So we solve that problem with dual power supplies, dual fans, NEB compliant hardware that has the ability to make sure that the network doesn't go down. It's fault tolerant, self-healing, self-routing, so on and so forth. So you never really lose any data up to the tool layer. Now the second thing is that if an operator's made that investment in 1 gig tools, for example, they can continue to use those 1 gig tools. They don't necessarily need to have to reinvest, or they can defer their investment in 10 gig tools, because we can do session-aware load balancing on the back end of our units, take all of those 1 gig tools, and then split that 10 gig pipe across all of those tools. So there's a few different stories here. Now, on the policy control side of things, I guess give me an idea of where you're going with that.
You know, listen, I mean, whether it's dimer metering protocols or moving into that sort of situation in the layer, right? Again, it comes back to the over-the-top players, comes back to the idea of this, the consumption of data. But there's still no standard in that arena yet. What makes VSS better at what you're doing in that type of situation than competitors in the market space?
Okay. Right, so within the LTE space, I mean, there's one network element, a PCRF, that looks after policy control or charging function. So what I would say that's more relevant to us is how we can help tool vendors to provide any sort of enforcement policy about letting customers onto a network or letting services happen. And then this comes back to the OTT versus the rich communication suite. So what we can do is we're an enabler to provide optimized data to those tools, whatever those tools are, whether it's policy control, whether it's admission or AAA or whatever it is, but we optimize the way that you get access to that data.
Okay, Andy, and finally, where are you seeing some stats that have sort of wowed you in a lot of the in the last 6 months that inevitably is driving that business forward for the next 6 months?
Sure. Okay. Well, there's a number of stats that have come out recently. So one of the fun ones to talk about, and I really do mean fun because we really don't know if there's some sandbagging involved here or not, is within North America there's some carriers that are saying they're running out of spectrum, and then of course we've got the Cisco VNI report as well. So we'll really see if the adoption rates are that high, and if we are indeed running out of spectrum. So that's one thing that's interested me. Video, of course, is a beautiful and interesting thing. It's causing a lot of new traffic on the network, and there's a lot of load, and if you have that load, then again it comes back to the points I made earlier, because if you have that load, whether it's OTT or whether it's a rich communication suite, then you've got to be able to monitor that traffic. So how do you actually monitor that traffic without building in a whole bunch of new infrastructure? We can help to optimize it.
And finally, in closing, then there you've kind of sort of answered a little bit of it, but what are we going to see from VSS in the future?
Sure, so more innovation. We are already a thought leader and innovator in the market. We have a lot of good things coming up. We have a lot of new features. We've talked about at this particular show our packet deduplication feature and our fragment reassembly feature as well as our network management system as well. So you can expect to see more thought leadership. You can expect to see more features from us that will help to again optimize the way that tools get access to the network and get access to the data.
Andy, thanks for taking the opportunity to speak with us here today at Mobile World Congress. Hope to get a chance for an update again in the future, and well positioned in the marketplace. Congratulations.
Thank you very much indeed.
I've been speaking with Andy Huckridge from VSS Monitoring. I'm Tony Sklar here at Mobile World Congress with BNet TV.